So good morning, everybody. My name is Andrew Spina. Before we start, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this event is taking place, and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So today we're very pleased to bring you a PiT briefing, and I'm delighted that there are so many of you here this morning. Today's format is going to include 3 presentations, taking us through till around 9:20. Following the presentations, we'll have, as is tradition, a question and answer session until the conclusion of the PiT briefing, which will be around 9:35, and then everybody is invited to adjourn for networking, tea and coffee where we entered. To start proceedings today, I would like to introduce Ms Irene Violet, Assistant Director General at the Department of Housing and Public Works. Now, since July of this year, Irene has been responsible for managing the department's lead role in supporting the responsive government priority within our future state agenda. Irene and her team are working with all agencies to make Queensland services easier to use. Previously, Irene had responsibility for Queensland Shared Services, specifically in modernising and optimising the shared services used by 25 Queensland Government agencies and departments. She brought to this role a wealth of experience in customer service, digital transformation and management of high-volume processing, primarily in a commercially oriented public sector environment. Irene will now provide an overview of the responsive government priorities.
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday to you. As Andrew said, I'll just take you through the responsive government agenda, which is part of the our future state arrangements that we've got within the Queensland Government. It is new, so bear with me a little bit. We've got 6 priorities that the Queensland Government's focusing on at the moment, and one of those is be a responsive government. And as Andrew said, that's really about making government services easy to use. Now, when it was launched, these are the words that were used to describe what was going on, the intent of the priority. So it's not necessarily a digital government strategy. It's really focused on Queenslanders, citizens and businesses, and making services easy to use, whether they're online, face-to-face or over the phone. So we want to make sure that it feels easy to work with government. So at the moment, we've got a lot of agencies doing really good things. The difficulty is that we've got a bit of a complex environment. So this slide is deliberately busy because it is a busy world that we're working in Queensland Government. And it's not that we're necessarily heading in the wrong direction, we're certainly heading in the right direction, but what we're missing is that joined up connectivity of services from a citizen's point of view. So certainly that's what the research has been telling us, that we need to focus on ways to bring services together to make it easier from a citizen or business point of view. So what we know, so we've had a survey that we do on an annual basis for the last few years, and this is really the measure and the outcome that the priority area is working towards. And at the moment, we're looking at things like the ease of transacting or the ease of accessing services. So you can see that we've got a goal to have a 70% satisfaction rating with that, and at the moment, we're sitting around the high 50s with that. So we've got a bit of a step change to ignite across government. And you can see also in this graph that we've kind of plateaued over the last few years. So what we did, like a lot of other jurisdictions and other large institutions and organisations, is that we kicked up services, we put PDF forms online and thought we'd nailed this online transacting, but what we've now got to do is reimagine the way that we present services to our customers of Queensland Government, and certainly the research tells us that they expect government to work much like other large institutions like banks and things like that, insurance companies, that we bring information to them when they need it, and that means that we've got to sort of cut through and have a horizontal view of government and get out of kind of our vertical silos. obviously we've looked at, well, where is this working well across other jurisdictions in Australia or across international jurisdictions, and we've cherry-picked, if you like, the secrets of success. And what we've done with that is that we've put that together in 5 work themes that we're organising our programs of work. Now, when I say our programs of work, it is really a Queensland Government view. So although this initiative is being run out of the Department of Housing and Public Works, it's not a land grab. We're not taking all the work that's happening across the sector, but what we're doing is that we're trying to present a whole of sector view and trying to make sure that we're connecting agencies on like initiatives and like projects. So as a government, we're investing more wisely in these things and that we're getting a better outcome for citizens and businesses. So these 5 themes will not be things that seem new to you. It's not certainly not sort of brand new out of the box, but they're a really good anchor for making sure that we're focusing on the right things with the projects and services that we're delivering. So the first one is putting customers at the centre of everything that we do, and that's really helpful in that connecting piece. So making sure that across the government we're putting customers at the centre and that we're joining up our services around them. The rethinking service delivery is a really interesting one. So traditionally, big institutions, large organisations kind of take an inside-out view. So they look at, well, what do we need to do? So we're really needing to rethink that. What's a different way that government can provide services to citizens to meet their need? The simplifying the customer experience is an interesting one. So when we talk about digitise the core, we're not talking about a great big monolithic system that we're going to be implementing across the whole of government, but what we are talking about is how do we make sure that the systems that we've got talk to each other so that from an end user's point of view, it is much more simple to deal with government. So it's that beautiful thing where perhaps at the front end things look beautiful and simple. There's a lot of chaos and work that's happening behind the scenes that we will iterate and improve over time, but certainly we want to make sure that we're keeping in mind from the customer's touch point that it's as simple as possible. In order to do that, we've got to leverage all the systems that we've got, understand our data and service patterns much more, making sure that we're leveraging the technology that we've got and that we're feeding into the digital economy. In order to keep this momentum going, though, we've got to make sure that we're building the capability of the public sector so that we've got the leadership, the know-how to keep it going, that it can't be a flash in the pan. We've got to make sure that we've got the drive and momentum to keep us going. And as I said, there's a lot of progress already happening in this area. So particularly with that last one, we're working quite heavily with the QGISCF, with the Public Service Commission. There's a lot of work targeted about capability. We know that the way that the public sector is working is changing, like everyone. So what are the programs and the, I guess, the lift that we need to put in place to make sure that we can keep this going? I think Sandra might touch on that a little bit from an agency's perspective as well. So what are some of the things that we're actually doing? That's certainly the background. We're trying to kick off a few foundation projects. So we're looking at the things that what are real enablers of change across, as I said, that horizontal view. And these aren't really our easiest projects, but they're certainly the things that we need to tackle from a multi-agency perspective. So one of the things is that we're really starting with our digital front door, is the qld.gov.au. How do we make sure that that's easier to use, to navigate, and that we're bringing services to people, not necessarily having people to search around and find them. So that's certainly one where we're looking at iterative enhancements and what we can do with that. In order to support the joining up of services, of course, we need the authentication around sort of who our customers are so that we can bring services to them. A lot of jurisdictions are working on this. We've obviously got the federal government looking at it as well, so it's a whole of collective process that we're going through, and it's incredibly complicated. It's one of those things where it sounds super easy, but there's a lot of component pieces, particularly if you think about the breadth of services that citizens and businesses have with government. The third one we've got there is digital wallet, and that's where we're certainly taking the lead from TMR, looking at digital licensing and what we can do with that. So that's an ongoing project where we want to work with all agencies down that vein. And then the Business Queensland improvement with future procurement systems. So you'll probably know better than I that our front door for procurement is less than optimal. So we're certainly got to do some work on that, and the way that we interact with businesses generally as a government needs to lift as equally as we do with citizens. So these are projects that have been in flight, but we're certainly making sure that they connect to the responsive government agenda and making sure that we leverage these projects so that we've got, like I said, that horizontal view across government. It's not the only thing that we're doing in responsive government. There are lots of other than supporting projects that we've got on our program of work that are either multi-agency or agencies in a siloed way that we can then spin out to other projects and learn from their capability build. But it's not everything. So we've got a flight plan that we've developed. It's not everything that government is doing to make services more responsive and easier. So what we're really trying to do with this priority, it's a bit what I said yesterday, it's a movement. What we're trying to do is get all agencies, all public servants to think about the work that we're doing and how they can pitch it so that it is more responsive. So it's not a sort of holistic program. If you're not on the one pager, that means you're out. We certainly want agencies to continue moving in this direction, but what we're trying to do is join up where it makes sense and where it has benefit for Queenslanders. I've talked a lot about digital initiatives as well, and you might be thinking, hang on, didn't she say at the beginning this was not necessarily a digital government initiative? What we're very conscious of is that by leveraging technology, it's going to enable and deliver better services, whether it is over the phone or whether it is face-to-face. If we can make sure that our staff have got the right systems, they're going to be able to deliver more valuable services for all Queenslanders and businesses. So it really is about harnessing the technology so that we can deliver a better outcome. So like I said, and you won't read this, so you can't read this, so I will scoot over it quickly. But this is the idea, I guess, of the program of work. It's using those 5 work themes, some of the projects that we're working on, and as I said, it's a bit of a moving feast. Things come in and out of it, but this is kind of the high-level work that we're doing. So the responsive government team is a little bit different as well. So some of you might have been familiar with kind of the one-stop shop initiative. So that's ran its course for 5 years, finished on the 30th of June this year, and that's when responsive government commenced. So the sorts of things that we're doing in our little team, and it is a little team, that are a little bit different is that we're really looking at, well, how do we co-design, work with agencies in a more, sort of partnership sense on in-flight and new projects. We are not the lead on everything that is in our flight plan or will be in our flight plan in the future, but we are certainly there to enable, connect and support agencies and come in and out as they need. We want to identify those projects and programs of work that are going to shift the dial for Queenslanders in terms of that real sense that government is easier to use. We've certainly got some things around the life admin that goes along with government that we want to make easier for everyone, with looking at things that we can kick off in that vein and certainly facilitate some of the prioritisation and leveraging the resources that we've got. We're not a portfolio management office. We are not just reporting on the things that are going on, but we're certainly providing that collective view, as I mentioned earlier. So that's a little snapshot on responsive government. Now, I cannot stay for the panel session, so I think I've got probably 2 minutes if anyone's got a question now. Sorry, Andrew.
No, good.
Yeah. We're good? All done? Lovely. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Irene. Now, even though Irene is leaving, when we have the panel session, if there are some questions regarding responsive government, Andrew Mills, the Chief Information Officer, and myself are very actively involved in the projects and the program of work that are there. So if there are some questions, we'll do our very best to try and answer them as well. So on to our next speaker. So Ms. Sandra Slater is the Chief Information Officer at the Department of Transport and Main Roads. Sandra has established herself as an accomplished service delivery lead across program and project services, applications management and enterprise information management before taking up the CIO role in August of last year. Sandra currently leads a team of more than 400 staff and contractors with an annual budget of $100 million. She is responsible for delivering significant ICT programs to improve customer experience and deliver better digital business outcomes for the department. Sandra is also the winner of the Women in Technology's 2018 ICT Outstanding Achievement Award. Her presentation will highlight the strategic focus areas for the Information Technology branch. Please welcome Sandra.
And good morning, everyone. It's certainly a great opportunity to talk to you about my very favourite topic, which is what's happening in IT and transport and main roads. It's also lovely to see some familiar faces. I think many of you might have been down at Gartner over the last few days, so it's certainly been a busy week and a good week really to test the sort of key areas of focus going forward. So what I would like to just start with for something a little bit different is talk a bit about TMR, and I'll let a video give you the scale of what our vast business for TMR is all about. So hopefully that's something you've maybe seen for the first time, and I suppose it just goes to give you some of those numbers that are quite significant there in understanding the breadth of the service that Transport and Main Roads has for Queensland. So we're all about connecting people, connecting goods, enabling business across Queensland, which is a very, very vast state. So just to put some context around the information technology branch, so I am the CIO and I lead a team of 400. So in doing that with the support of some very, very great people. So I've got there my key 3 executives. Unfortunately, they're all back at work today, sort of paying the debt from some time out at Gartner this week. But you'll see there Lance Oswald leads the business team. So that really is our front-end engagement in with the organisation around new solutions, project delivery, and that is sort of the home of our major programs in digital and data, which I'll give you a brief overview about soon. Brett Stenson's recently joined us in July this year. So Brett is the Executive Director of Technology. So he leads the infrastructure team, our service operations and our applications. And then Ray Simpson is sitting in the Executive Director for Performance. So Ray's got a bit of a bag in there, but he's got the security, he's got our procurement, he's got our finance, our HR, our library. So there's quite a significant number of business enabling capabilities that sit there with Ray. Okay, so just some context. So Andrew talked about we have 400 people, but to put in context, TMR does have some major ICT streams also outside of the central area. So I'm responsible for about 50% of the organisation's spend, about 50% of the breadth of the business applications portfolio. In terms of sort of the key areas of focus, so we have over 9,000 staff in the organisation. So the tools of the trade and what enables them to do business every day and the provisioning of the corporate network is in my area of responsibility. You'll see there in the guiding function, there's certainly the head of discipline across things like our ICT procurement, architecture, security. It sits in with my team. And that is where we're driving our digital experimentation and our data analytics program, and those key capabilities that really enable the whole organisation to reach better performance is being driven out of IT, as well as project delivery I talked about before. And then in the application space, so yes, we do have quite a few. That's a big part of my business. I'm sitting there with Trails, some of you will know about, is our major registration and licensing platform, our asset management systems in the road and transport infrastructure space, GIS, intranet, internet, and there's a huge list of business applications. It's probably easier to talk about the ones that I don't manage. I've got the GoCard system managed out in our TransLink area. The intelligent transport system and the traffic light systems is run by the engineering and technology group. And Maritime sort of have their own network there managing the vessel traffic monitoring system. And that's probably about the key breadth of the solutions in the organisation. Right, so I have a timekeeper in front of me, so I'm going to try and keep this really brief, and I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of all areas of focus and the key things on my strategy and my team's strategy. So first area is about improving user experience. As I mentioned, anything we can do that improves the livelihood of our workers every day, and being able to give them back time and opportunities to collaborate better in the organisation and be more productive is our aim there. This year we have fully deployed Skype for Business. We've transitioned away from 90% of handsets to headsets, which we weren't sure could actually be done, but the department has absolutely gone on that cultural change journey with us. And we're introducing Office 365, where we're over sort of halfway through that deployment, and we're out about in the regions at the moment, so that'll take us through to early next year. Next to come there, we have a fairly significant undertaking to get everyone to Windows 10 as well. I think as well as really exploring more and more around the collaboration capabilities, and things like Team Planner and Teams are really, really taking off in our organisation, which is great to see. Driving business and customer innovation. I mentioned about digital and data. I might just hold that and show you a little bit more detail on those after this one. Fostering continuous improvement. This is really one of my my hobbies that I'm really passionate about, and this is the call out to everyone in our organisation and our team to continuously look for how we improve our business. An initiative that I champion on behalf of the whole of the corporate division is called the 20,000 Days. And the objective there is to give back 20,000 days of effort to the organisation. Now, you think that sounds like a really big number. In the last 18 months, we have scored 7,500 of annualised days back to the organisation. And that has come, some of the big stuff is obviously through some of our automation initiatives and things like expense claim systems and things that are helping people and just some of that transactional activity every day and taking away some of the back-end processing. But even, just getting the IT branch had an example there of, doing a customer journey mapping over a mobile phone order. The little bits and sort of that call out to every manager in the organisation, particularly in the corporate group, because we are an enabler to the department, to find ways to improve their processes, improve their systems, improve their touch points with customers, is really what this one's all about. And we've really seen a great take up on it, and that's going to be a big feature going forward as well. Unleashing data, I'll show you a bit more on that soon. Strengthening ICT resilience. We've had a really pinnacle year with our comm games. Efforts very much focused on being in as best a state we could be to ensure a successful comm games. So I'm really proud of the work that the TMR organisation has done as a whole, and my team in really getting us to a certain point of certainty there. We did team a lot of activity around hardware and software upgrades, and that was also part of an improvement program to improve performance of our infrastructure across the regions for better performance. But obviously the security activity, it's never going to be done, but we certainly have had a really good kickstart there this year, and recently launched our strategy, which is actually on the TMR website. You'll see we've got an overarching ICT security strategy sitting there, and our forward program of work now has been defined for the next 3 years. Maximising ICT investment, so for our organisation, and you saw the breadth of function there, so the ability to work with the executive and our peak ICT governance committee is really important. That one, we actually marry together and work on activities together that link our data and our systems across the organisation, but also that we focus our money in the right places. So we have been on a fairly big maturity program in the portfolio governance and management space, but also a lot of this for me is really around that working with the industry too, and I'll talk a little bit to our Flexi-ProQr processes and just our engagement by being able to tackle things piece by piece, deliver quickly, and absolutely be certain we're on the right paths. Oh, and our valuing our people most definitely is the one big thing that ties that all together. And just sitting at Gartner for the last few days, and there's a lot of talk about workforce strategies, and it's not about replacing people. The automation is freeing up people, and undoubtedly it is our people that need to move into the capabilities. So it's not something we can do for them. So the leadership and guidance, but have had a very big activity across the workforce on doing future workforce plans themselves and being involved in that activity, and really looking at those growth areas and the key skills and capabilities for the future. Okay, so our digital capability, and hopefully some of you read our newsletters that are out there we do quarterly or full monthly newsletters, and they're out there on the website. So there are quite a few feature articles to talk about what we've been doing in digital. We're 2 years through what started as a 3-year program, and you'll see there the foundation pillar is all around capability. So very big focus is about building an organisation that has capability to take it forward. And just to put some numbers to that, in the last 12 months, we've had 1,000 people through the door out of our 9,000 have either attended showcases for what's possible with artificial intelligence. We did a showcase on digital design thinking, training, customer journey mapping, agile, lean, design thinking. Really, we're trying to tackle this en masse, and I'm very lucky also to have a DG our CEO, is very much about how do I have my organisation as a whole with the skills and capability of the future, and that is where our innovation and our drive will come from. So that's a key focus for our digital program. Move on from there. And we've teamed that up with an incubator. So now we haven't brought a lot of central money to this. This was around creating more the workspace and the opportunity and getting participation by the business. But like I said, it's about having that go and putting little money into it, experimenting and seeing what's possible. So that's been a really big feature of getting that momentum across the organisation. And I briefly mentioned the Flexi-ProQr Framework. So sort of in the past 12 months, we've obviously seen changes with the Queensland procurement policy. I think Irene talked to that briefly. So this is certainly where we want to work more and more with you to continuously improve this. So want the best experience for you, want the best experience for us, and at the end of the day, we'll deliver solutions quicker to our customers and business. So I think hopefully many of you had the opportunity. So there were some vendor-based workshops as we've worked through some of those improvements this year, but certainly call out to any ideas that you have around making this procurement work well for us all is that invitation is open. With my 3 minutes to go, so very briefly, data and business analytics. So we laid down a strategy last year, and I think the novel thing with that and how we got the big move forward was really talking with our executive, our business executive, around crunchy questions. Because there's a lot of work to do here, right? And there's a lot of data and there's a lot of capability in the organisation, particularly in a place like Transport and Main Roads. Tying that together and being able to bring it and get the insights and deliver those questions, answers, is a real key thing that has helped us leap forward here. So we landed a number of crunchy questions with our business leaders, and that embarked on okay, we're ready to give you some money for that. So you'll see there what we call our alien eye, and on the bottom of that is all around our capability program. Very similar approach to what we're doing in digital, and it's about community of practice, engagement across the organisation, unleashing some of those capabilities that are absolutely already there. Also building some foundational platforms, you know. And we started this off with a community of practice invite. We started with 40 people. Within 6 months, it's now sitting at 200. So there is a thirst across our organisation. And in fact, it is, you'll see those red lines. We've actually, we've had to rethink a little bit about what we were doing. Initially, we were going to do lots of proof of concepts and, you know, come back with our big business case on how to get into a data exchange platform. By looking at what we have across the organisation and the skills and capabilities, talent that we have, the data we have, a lot of this was about connecting that together. So we've brought forward building out our data exchange platform so that every proof of concept is actually delivering data into there. And I think I actually have a picture that you won't really be able to get a lot from there. But the key thing here is around us being able to have that one platform that enables that access, initially just even inside our organisation, and being able to bring data together. When we talk about our first proof of concept was taking the public transport real-time data on buses, putting together the incidents that were happening on the transport network that you see delivered through the Queensland Traffic website, married those together, and then we were starting to predict the delay on the bus if there was a traffic incident. Sounds pretty basic. Your data needs to be accessible to do that. You need to bring together all streams of your data. And some of you may know that we have a connected and autonomous vehicle trial that's stated for next year. So we are actually using this data exchange platform. It's the first key candidate initiative to build out in there, which will have a lot of data. So just a call out there for our ICT Bites, have done a recent release, like literally I think in the last few days. And I haven't obviously talked through all the projects today. You heard about the digital wallet, which actually made it to the splash screen in the opening keynote in Gartner on day 2, which was great. I think the industry briefing that some of you would have attended was only last Friday. So news travels really, really fast. You'll all be aware that we've got a major next generation ticketing project underway, so that's exciting. And mobility as service is really that big emerging new one for transport. To really understand the role that we play there, but we certainly have a program that's kick-started in the organisation so that we're absolutely part of that change journey in the way transport services are delivered in the future. And the importance of you, like I said, that call out from our procurement practices, very, very keen to have your feedback continuously on that. And, you know, we work with many of you in the room, and all I can say is thank you. We actually have a huge, exciting program ahead, and look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you.
So I actually would encourage you to look out for that newsletter. I think it did come out around recently, and I always welcome it. It's always great to see what's happening, because Transport and Main Roads is actually very innovative in some of the programs, as you can see from there today. Our next speaker is Mr. Robert Champion. He is the Acting Chief Information Security Officer for Queensland Government Chief Information Office. Rob and his team set the central information security strategy and policy for the Queensland Government, along with providing practical advice and assistance to agencies in all things cybersecurity. For over 25 years, Rob has worked in a range of technical, architectural and strategy roles in Queensland Government ICT. Rob has led the push to improve cybersecurity across Queensland Government and currently leads the Queensland Government Cybersecurity Unit. There's a revised information security policy in effect for the Queensland Government. Rob will, in this presentation, address what these changes are, what they mean, and what does information security need to look like for the Queensland Government in the future. Please join me in welcoming Rob.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I get to talk about the really wonderful area of policy, which usually puts a lot of people to sleep, but here we go. Cybersecurity is now a strategic risk to all organisations. If you're not reading about it in the news every week or every day, then you're probably not reading the right media. No one wants to be front page news from a cybersecurity incident, and everyone is a potential target. Increasingly, we're just seeing the attackers using whatever means that they can to get at the organisations they're targeting, be that very generically or broadly, or specifically targeting in organisations like government. And they'll use the weakest point of security. So never underestimate the criminals' ability to turn your stuff into their money, or the impact and damage to your reputation when that happens. So this is a collective situation where suppliers and organisations are very much joined together. It doesn't really matter where the security incident happens, it actually affects all of the players in that ecosystem. We've been doing information security for decades. So what's changed? You've heard about it today, that increasing digitisation. We've got a lot of complexity. The expectations of community stakeholders are definitely increasing. Privacy is very much front of mind for a lot of our stakeholders these days. And the sophistication and the motivation of the attackers continues to increase. So Queensland Government has IS-18, which is its information security policy set. And it's part of the government enterprise architecture that QGISCF facilitates and curates on behalf of government. We've had policy since about '93. It's had a number of iterations. We're on to about our 5th version. The obligations of it come out of the Financial Accountability Act and the Performance Management Standards. And its last major refresh was in about 2009. But we've always been based around 7799 or the 27001 standards. The drivers for change, why are we changing IS 18 at this point in time? Was really that the current standard had changed. Original version we were looking at had been refreshed. There was new components in there that we wanted to take advantage of and realign to that current standard. And it really didn't meet, the current standards that we had didn't meet the agency's need in their increasingly complex environment. It hadn't been particularly well adopted. We always are working with agencies to help them lift their adoption of these security policies, but we want to make them effective in their organisations. It focused on the controls, not really what we were trying to achieve, so it really had a compliance mindset, and it really didn't talk about governance and assurance elements of things. So we brought a new policy 1st of October, and it really represents a move from a compliance focus to a risk-based focus. We want agencies to consider the risks, not just comply to a tick list of things that you had to do. The policy wording, you can read this for yourself, but there's a couple of key things in here. We want to protect the information appropriately, we want to do a risk-based approach, and we want to maintain the confidentiality, integrity and availability. And increasingly we're starting to talk about things like risk in a safety, reliability sense as well. So the policy requirements now are agencies must implement an ISMS or an Information Security Management System based on ISO 27001. That's really simplifying what we're talking about in these policy sets. It's actually quite a smaller policy than originally it was. The policy requirement 2 is really about improving risk management and adopting risk management frameworks, leveraging what is already risk management in the organisation, and enterprise risk management. Government's approach is to adopt ISO 31000, and that's been in place for a number of years. There's some minimum security requirements. So we're really simplifying this down to the things that are really core. What we found was agencies were unclear about what they had to comply with, and getting traction for some of those things was difficult sometimes. So there's a classification scheme so that we're in a consistent approach to how we label and classify things. There's some security transmission assurance frameworks which we'll probably claim or probably review into a process where we talk about data encryption standards. There's an authentication framework which talks about those processes for us to authenticate ourselves, our customers, and have consistency around that. And we're asking agencies to implement ASD's Essential 8 strategies. That is really about building that hygiene into our environment. Most organisations will have heard of either the top 4 and now the Essential 8 from ASD. Agency accountable officers must obtain assurance for their systems. Now this is where we're really trying to change the discussion here. It's about getting the business to own some of this information security transition. It's no longer just a technical problem. Accountable officers, so by accountable officers we're talking about director generals or commissioners or whatever their title is in their organisation. They must attest to the information security of their organisation. So we're trying to get that ownership and accountability at the right levels of the organisation, get the right buy-in. Previously, a lot of our processes were signed off at maybe the CIO level, and that just reinforced that issue that, well, that's a technical problem. The technology guys look after security. We continue to have a reporting requirement so that we get some visibility and that we can actually understand where agencies are at and then shape our programs such that we can assist the agencies to build maturity where it makes sense. So we talked about the classification framework. There are some changes aligning with the federal government. There's some changes at the federal government level as well. The old classification scheme is being changed. Previously, it really only talked about confidentiality in the classification scheme. We're now talking about integrity and availability as well and asking agencies to assess those as part of this process. The new labels are protected, sensitive and official, so really simplifying that down. The old standards were quite complex and we wanted to really make it easier for agencies to implement. National security information continues to be handled underneath the federal ISM. So Queensland Government, if we are handling national security information at the secret, top secret levels, they will be under as custodians for national security. So the benefits of stronger adoption of 27001 is really that it focuses on that governance, that accountability, and putting it at the right place of the organisation. Moving from that compliance approach and the tick box approach to security to really saying, hey, let's look at the risks that we're trying to manage here and have the business as part of that conversation. Establishing our continuous process improvement is really important here, that we continue to embed this as the risk changes in the risk environment changes. Having a common language so that we can talk to vendors, so we can talk to providers, that we actually understand what the obligations and what the assurance mechanisms are going to be between the various layers. As we adopt more cloud, and Queensland is very strong on the journey towards cloud, big take-up. We heard Office 365 is pretty much entrenched in most organisations, but as a service is our delivery model that we're using for a lot of things. Leveraging the capabilities of the market is really about our ability to using the understanding that's already there, the assurance, the capability, the assurance mechanisms that are in the market. So we're going to focus on that governance and accountability. We want agencies to select their controls from ISO 27002 or the other applicable frameworks. So if it's PCI DSS, and that applies to your environment because you're handling credit cards, also select controls from that space. ISM for federal government and national security information, and NIST. Wherever best practice is, we can adopt it. But the key thing is around our governance and accountability. Improving our risk management capability continues to be a focus for us. So getting real conversations about risk to occur have always been challenging. A lot of the time we want to talk about the benefits, not the disbenefits or the risks to the organisation. So how do we keep bringing those forward? The control objectives haven't changed significantly. They're pretty much the same as they were in ISO 27000 previously. We've gone from 10 to 12. But those headings are much the same, and we still want the same outcomes. Now, this is one of the big ones, is that certification isn't required. Some agencies may use certification, and it needs to be commensurate with the risk that we're trying to manage. So the higher the risk, the more assurance we should be looking for in the organisations. And certification's a really good way to demonstrate that we have a process in place and a maturity in place. So what does it mean for service providers like yourselves and our partners? Agencies will want to look to create a chain of accountability. So how does the Director General get, or the Chief Executive get assurance that the information security is correct in their organisation? Well, they will look to the system owners of each to describe that assurance and what's in place. The supplying levels underneath that, much the same. It doesn't necessarily need to be certification, but we're going to have a common language around that ISO 27001 approach. Agencies are going to look for that assurance from their suppliers. 27001 is going to be the language we will use in that. Assurance requirements will depend on the risks that the agency is exposed to. So depending, if you've got a much more complex system that you're working on or a business risk, agencies will look for more assurance. And implementing 27001 within your organisations is a good way to manage your security and provide assurance and to demonstrate to your customers that things are growing in maturity and give them confidence. So in summary, we start to talk about cybersecurity being a business risk, not just an IT problem. This is very much about getting the business much more engaged in the conversation and trying to change some of that culture about how we account and assure ourselves that we're doing the right things. We need to integrate risk back ICT risk back into the enterprise risk environment. So we're doing a whole bunch of risks management at the organisational level. Cybersecurity is just another risk. We need to consider the risk to all stakeholders, not just to the organisation, but to our customers, to our partners, to, you know, innocent bystanders potentially if we're talking about safety. And we've got to assess that risk and accept appropriate levels of risk at the right levels of the organisation. So not having technical people sign off on business risks, we actually want the business to be part of that conversation. We need to consider how we're preventing, detecting and responding. It's not just about building bigger fences and bigger forts around things. This is actually about when we have a security incident, are we ready to detect that and are we ready to respond to it? And we've got to design with that assurance in mind. So how will we get confidence that our systems will be effective and efficient in those situations? So there's quite a bit of information on the new standards in the QGISCF website. You're welcome to go and have a read of those. By all means, if there are questions, you can send those through to the QGISCF email address and we'll attempt to answer those. This journey is a very deliberate journey around the governance and assurance, not the need for more technical controls. Once we understand our environment, we can apply the right controls with the right buy-in. So thank you very much.
So I'm going to ask Rob and Sandra to return to the stage and grab a seat. I'm also going to invite Andrew Mills to take up Irene's seat, which is now vacated, and an opportunity for him as well. So Andrew Mills is the Queensland Government Chief Information Officer. If you have any questions, we have some roving mics on the floor, so the opportunity is yours. We've got one question right here.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. Aaron Farrington from FinXL. I've got a question for Sandra because she's the one who says she has $100 million. You've got an audience here of people who provide recruitment services and staff augmentation and professional services, project services, managed services, and as-a-service models. Which of those is the sweet spot for your engagement? Are you still looking to sort of retain some control and ownership and risk, or are you looking to push that risk out to the people that are here today?
Yeah, look, I would say it's probably across all, and just not to cheat there. So I do have a big organisation, so I do have 400 staff, and you know, finding the right continued functions and services, and I think quite timely now, given our advances in the digital and data, we're ready to start talking about our future operating model and what that really means for us. We've been heavily partnered by contractors in the past, and you will have seen over the past 12 to 18 months, we've started to talk more about capability partners, and there's been a few opportunities that have gone out to market there. So we're looking for those strategic and long-standing relationships around being able to have all the capabilities that we need. But then it's also solution specific. So, you know, I don't think I talked much about cloud in my presentation, but certainly with major modernisation projects, and we do have some big legacy applications there. Once they fall into those modernisations, and obviously software as a service is a very great option, that would be one of the first things considered there. So I think it's all things. It's really around which technologies and solutions are being replaced at what times, and standing up on those investment decisions, but also about the best positioning for my workforce into the capabilities and skills that they can offer into the organisation.
Any other questions? Just at the front here.
I have a question, please, for I guess both Andrew and Sandra, and it's about the responsive government and about utilising, I guess, data across portfolios. I mean, TMR is quite pervasive, obviously, through the state and through government. how are you reaching out to other departments, understanding what data sets and what data is available across other departments, and then ensuring that, for instance, when a road gets modelled in BIM or CAD or something else, it only gets modelled once?
Have we got it now? Lots of things going on in the data and information space. So starting with open data, still a focus, and it sits within responsive government now. No, it sits in your team now.
Yeah.
We've just done a bit of reorganisation. So really strong in that area. Certainly Andrew's team as well is developing a analytics capability to support agencies and do that, some of that cross-government stuff. We shouldn't forget that within Queensland Treasury we have a very strong data organisation under the statistician that's been doing a lot of this work for a lot of years. And so how do we kind of broaden that and bring it out? They tend to lead up to the current state, not necessarily predictive, so there's a conversation about where we fit that. Certainly a conversation around some form of data analytics act, etc. are happening, whether we go that path. Victoria and New South Wales have both gone that path. But also my team has, if you kind of take, and we'll take cybersecurity is our 5-year program, information management and sharing is our 3-year program, which has been going for a while. Big focus on sharing for service delivery though as well. Kind of the two bits, and the area that we've seen, and if you've read a lot of reports about government services, having that right piece of information at the right spot at the right time is actually a pretty key outcome, and we've been doing a lot of work on that. So to give you one example, we're currently trialling what we call the information sharing framework, authorisation framework, which is around how do you actually decide who can see what when, and getting over the kind of barriers of this is data that's personal, I can't share it. And we're, on the other side, we're also seeing a lot of legislation change around actually being clearer within the legislation of when you can use that data and when you can't. And to give one example, Sandra talked about Coral, a big program. Part of that program is actually legislation. It's not just a technology program, it's about a change project. And part of it's looking at the legislation of how we can use licensing and registration information, etc. And the key, and the interesting, what that's bringing out for us is not just about the data, it's about the social licence of how we can use that data. And so big conversations starting to happen in government about how we talk to citizens, etc., about how we use their data and get their authority. And if you look at some of the failures recently with citizen data, it has been, we haven't had those open conversations. So this is not a quick change, it's something we're going to take our time on.
I think if I channel Kelly Nuttall from Deloitte, where she would do the big call out to all of industry, you know, as we look to the future of mobility as a service for transport service delivery, we're talking there about the entire ecosystem working together. So delivering smart cities, being able to, you know, link up public transport to autonomous vehicles to hire cars, and you know, to take your journey from one step to the other step is an issue for all of us to understand how our data will work together for that.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. All right. Look, I think we'll leave it at that. I'm going to ask you all to please thank our speakers here today, and also Andrew, who's joined us, including Sandra, Irene, Rob, and Andrew. Please thank them. Can I make a plug as well? Just wanted to take the opportunity to let you know about the upcoming Testing Within Government Showcase, which is being held on the 7th of December at the QUT Gardens Point. This is your chance to meet and hear from business and government participants in the culmination of what is a 12-week program showcasing how innovative solutions have addressed real business problems. So more detail will be posted on the Advanced Queensland website shortly. Can I thank everyone, all the staff that were involved in putting this morning's session together. Again, I went off without a hitch. I'll thank all of you for attending, and please make your way to the outside of this session for tea and coffee, and thank you all for attending.